Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Sunday evening. Joining us from New York City, home of the Eastern Conference finalist, New York Knicks, is Tim Bontemps.
Hello, everybody. Bunch of riled up Knicks fans here. Very, very fired up.
I feel like if you're under the age of 30 and you're a Knicks fan, you can't talk about how long it's been. You know, there's some Knicks fans with gray hair who can talk about lamenting all their losses. But if you're under 30, enjoy your team's success, but I'm not going to talk about your long suffering. Joining us from Oklahoma City, where he was at Game 7 between the Nuggets and Thunder today, is MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. Heck of a win for the Oklahoma City Thunder today, and enjoyed a nice, peaceful, quiet stroll from the arena all the way back to my hotel where I meet you now.
And you'll be having a nice stroll to the bar in a little while as soon as we're done, I believe, as well.
Just right behind the hotel, Tipsy Tiki.
It wasn't much of a... Here's the thing. What you don't know, Bontemps, is that he's actually suffering from a wound inflicted by his sons yesterday.
Okay,
What happened?
No,
What happened?
I don't know. I'm guessing, but my left foot started acting up on me on the stroll back to the hotel, which is a concern because I've quasi-organized a media pickup run between games 1 and 2. I kind of warmed up for that run by challenging the boys to a little 1v1v1, as they call it.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And, well, good news is this. I won both games. Okay. Liam, you know Liam, little mouthy
I know Liam. I know both of them, actually.
Mouthy little fella. Might have gotten some of that from me. Told me, you've never been a shooter, as I drained a 3 right in his face and told him, you better guard me now.
You gotta love MacMahon, who talks trash.
I also don't think it was in his
beating
face
up
because
on
he's a foot
12-year-olds.
shorter than you, and he's like 10. So
Over his face, he's 12. Anyways, let's talk about the NBA.
All right. I got to say, when I heard that Aaron Gordon was going to play in this game, I had to naturally flash back to last year in Game 7 in this round at the Garden, when Bontemps and I, when OG Anunoby shuffled out onto the court, and we just looked at
shuffled
each other.
feels like an aggressive stance for how he wandered out there.
Right. And I just looked at Bontemps and I was like, they're not actually going to play him, are they? And so I'm watching videos of Aaron warming up. And I'm like, well, he doesn't look terrible, but he's not running. Like, he's not actually going to play, right?
He didn't make a single explosive movement in his warm-up or any attempt to sprint. Nothing explosive.
And he didn't even in the game, really, did he?
There was one.
God bless him for playing. To be clear, I'm not.
And honestly, like
out there.
They didn't like Aaron Gordon wasn't the reason they lost this game. We'll get to that in a minute. They got the doors blown off them. Aaron for a grade 2 hamstring strain suffered.
That's brutal.
About 60 some odd hours before. The fact that he got on the floor and actually was a big part, like he was really good in the first quarter. They jump out to a 21-10 lead. I mean, they were hiding him in his zone and but man, every time he did anything that required acceleration, I was wincing. There was one time he drove to the basket and kind of missed like an awkward layup attempt. And I literally was cringing because, dude, and he knew the risk. Joker told him, don't play. Nikola Jokic said, I told him not to play. Basically you could make it much worse.
If you tear your hamstring,
it's months.
You have to have surgery.
Yeah.
And it's like...
It's a long
6 months
grueling rehab. Yes, yeah. That was the risk. His hope was that he could somehow help them win today. And then he said sit out the first 2 or 3 games of the next round. I mean, the likelihood was he wasn't going to be healthy next round for sure. But then he ends up he played until the game got out of hand, which honestly was pretty early in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, God bless him, honestly.
He did a great job. He got a bunch of rebounds. He got 11 rebounds.
Yeah. I mean, he did everything he could, and it was incredibly impressive to see him give it a shot. I mean, obviously their season's on the line. You expect a guy like him to play, and it's such a shame because, I mean, we've talked about him a ton. I mean, he's been unbelievable in these playoffs. I mean, he's probably
Great
been
playoffs.
one of the 5 or 10 best players, minimum 10 best players, maybe 5 best players in the playoffs so far this year. He's been incredible and hugely impactful for Denver.
If you had an all playoffs team, he would be on first team all playoffs.
Yeah,
and it's
my
really
thought.
such a bummer. Like his whole last year has been really, really tough, from the tragedy of his brother dying in a car accident through the calf injuries that he managed all year that cost him 30 some odd games, to this hamstring. And sadly, it's all intertwined because, I mean, think about it. Like, dude, this guy couldn't commit himself to his normal summer program. He's dealing with unspeakable grief.
Right. And his brother has
tragedy.
these kids that he's now basically helping raise.
His entire life was thrown into disarray. So, like, he couldn't train like he usually does, and that leads to all these soft tissue, or at least factors in to all the soft tissue injuries. He still was managing the calf, all the way through the playoffs, but he manages all that, has the best 2 playoff rounds of his career. And this is a guy who was a huge, huge piece of a championship team, hits 3 of the biggest shots of his career, 2 game winners and 1 that sent into overtime for a win in this series. And then it's in the last couple minutes of a game they've essentially got put away, and that hammy just grabs at him. He didn't think grade 2 surprised him. He said the MRI surprised him. And then he just refused to listen. He just refused to accept that he couldn't play through it. And he did. And it didn't matter, because one thing he couldn't do.
He did look much better than I thought he would. Like, he was able to somewhat move.
But he could not sprint. And let me tell you, there was a lot of sprinting required, because there was a whole lot of Oklahoma City transition, because that Thunder defense was spectacular.
This game is a piece of history. To me, the Gordon thing was fascinating, but it's a piece of history because you have 2 guys who are going to be 1-2 in the MVP. And if the Nuggets and Jokic had won this game, and Jokic had like a 40-point triple-double, and Gilgeous-Alexander gets the MVP next week, no matter what anybody would have said, because I would have defended everything, but
it would have been days of discussion about the deserving of
and
the
forever.
award,
In
100%.
And the optics
2037,
would have been tough.
Yeah.
2037, people would be like, well, yeah, Jokic won blah MVPs, but he really won that one in 25, and that was a fraud.
It's also weird it hasn't been handed out yet. I'm just going to say.
So I did talk to the league about this. And they just basically said we would never hand out any of the awards in the second week of round 2. And I go, I get that, but you always hand it out. You always hand it out the first week of round 2.
Right?
That doesn't.
They just didn't
really
want to hand it
compute.
out during this series, clearly.
I mean, that goes back to David Robinson and Akeem Olajuwon 30 years ago. That was literally this matchup in the second round of the playoffs. So
anyway, that was on the table. Like, there was history on the table here. And look, I'm not the fact that, so here's what needs to be said. What needs to be said is that Shai came out and had a brilliant game. He's 12 of 19.
Yeah.
He gets to the line. He has 35 points. And David Adelman pulled his starters. He probably would have goes for 40 if he had to go to the whole wire.
Well, and look, what happened in Game 6? Game 6 was lost for Oklahoma City, right? In the final 3 minutes of the second quarter, when they're up big, double digits, and they implode at the end of the quarter. Shai gets his 4th foul. They give up the 12-0 run. They go from up double digits to up 3 because Lou Dort hits the 3 at the buzzer. But all the momentum shifted back to the Nuggets, and they take over the second half and they go away and win, right? What happens in the final 3 minutes of the game today? They go on an 18-5 run. It goes from a 1-point game to a 14-point game. They rout them in the second half. Like you said, the game's over by the end of the third quarter. And it all came back to that same stretch, the end of the second quarter, and the way the Thunder went into halftime and then put the foot down after that. And the deeper, younger team looked like the deeper, younger team as Game 7 went on.
I'll definitely talk about that.
The rotation shortened, but go on. OKC's rotation.
Because when it matters, no matter what anybody says, when it matters, you play 8 and trust 7. I don't care what anybody says. History, thousands of times say that. And today, Mark Daigneault played 8. All right. So it needs to be said that Shai had a brilliant game in an all chips on the table moment, not just for the series, but historically.
The biggest game of his career. He delivered.
And the reason why the Thunder won this series, I mean, there's a number of reasons, their depth, etc., is because they won Game 5. Game 5 was where the rubber met the road in this series, and Shai brought him home. I know there was other factors.
But Denver had that lead to start of the fourth quarter. That's what they're going to think about all summer. They had the chance to close that game out just like Dallas did last year. MacMahon was there for both of them. And if Denver wins that Game 5, they weren't going to win Game 6 at home. The series is over.
So Shai will be getting that MVP trophy next week, and he was the MVP of the series as well. And so that's what's number one. The second thing I want to say is that Mark Daigneault went to a different strategy on Nikola Jokic in this game.
Oh, boy, did he.
Which I assume has been in his back pocket, MacMahon, that maybe he's like, do I need to go to this? He had Alex Caruso as the primary defender on Nikola Jokic in this game.
Running the hell out of him. And by the way, started the second half over Isaiah Hartenstein, and one of the trimmings from the rotation was Jalen Williams, who actually, considering
played pretty well
Jokic
in series.
Had held up okay defensively against him. That statistically held up well.
Here was the stats ESPN Stats and Information had. Caruso defended Jokic 37 possessions. Points per play, 0.78.
Now, it's not one-on-one, to be clear.
Of course.
It's Caruso fronting, then packing the paint, then spraying out. But, man, Caruso, it's the one proven champion on that OKC roster. This goes back to, this is the guy who they got for Josh Giddey, who, by the way, was benched in the second round last year, was pulled from the starting lineup last year. But Caruso his stat line, what was he, a plus 40 tonight?
Well, that's...
he just had, his box score line, aside from plus minus, does not begin to explain the impact that he had. He's so tough. He's so smart. He has such great hands. He wreaks so much havoc. The most important stat in this game.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Turnovers forced for 37 points.
I've never seen what the stat here. You just told half of it. I've never seen a spread this big in an NBA game. It's obviously happened, but I cannot remember it. The Thunder scored 37 points off turnovers. The Nuggets scored 7.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's a 32-point game, and that's a 30-point spread.
Never seen anything like it.
And
by the way, Caruso was when Caruso was defending Jokic, they generated 8 turnovers. Not all of them were Jokic's turnovers. They defended 8 turnovers.
That is so big for a million reasons. What was a huge storyline from Game 6 and even the couple games that the
Jalen Williams wasn't good.
Jalen Williams is really struggling. You know what the best way is to get him going?
Get transition dunks.
Get that bad dude out in transition.
Yep.
Create a turnover or even a long rebound block shot. They can run off a lot of different ways, but especially turnovers. Get them, and he is so good in the open floor. And he had 2 or 3 dunks early in the second quarter, I believe. And next thing you know, he's in a rhythm. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has his all-star sidekick. I thought Shai played a great patient game. He didn't come out forcing stuff. He didn't come out feeling like I've got to take over from the get-go. Everything was in the flow of the game. He was great, but this was the Thunder formula: dominant, swarming defense fuels the offense. Brilliant efficiency from Shai, and J-Dub is an all-star sidekick. That's how they won 68 games. That's how they set an NBA record for point differential. They had 54 double-digit wins in the regular season. Now, this series did test them in crunch time. They lost 2 crunch time games. They had to come through and win those 2 where Shai really did come through and close the door for them. But then they closed it out in the same fashion that they cruised the top seed in the NBA.
Well, and that's what they did all season, right? It was forcing turnovers and getting easy baskets. When these guys get in a half-court game and they can't create turnovers, they do really struggle at times offensively. And Jalen Williams had an awful series for the most part. But like you said, when he was getting out in transition and getting dunk after dunk after dunk as this game went on, makes you start feeling a lot better, right? And when they got out and ran and kept, like, the end of that second quarter, it was just one steal after another to a wide open transition dunk. And it was the same thing at the start of the third quarter. And in a 5-minute stretch, it went from a 1-point game to a 20-point game. And it just, at that point, you just didn't see a way for Denver back into it. And like you said, by the time the third quarter was over, it was like Joe Mazzulla in game 6 at the Garden. He was pulling his starters, and there was just a party for 12 minutes in OKC.
So
still going to the Tipsy Tiki.
Michael Porter Jr., I understand that he has been dealing with this shoulder thing, but this was his last 4 games of this series. 1 of 7, 1 of 7, 4 of 9. And what was he today?
He was 3 for 8, and he was 0 for 4 from 3.
I mean, this guy, I mean,
and it's like you said, it all goes back to game 5. They're up 8 at the end of the third quarter of game 5. If they win game 5, they're in the Western Conference Finals, and they're probably the favorite to win the title.
But seriously, when you got down to today with Aaron Gordon compromised, because I always talk about how many players can you trust. So you're in game 7. How many players could Jokic trust with him out there? Christian Brown. It was like Christian Brown and Jamal Murray. That was it by the end.
Yeah. And Jamal wasn't even good today.
But you trust him.
Russ was a minus 34 in 22 minutes. Actually hit a couple of threes, but that's all he did.
Their issue all year was a lack of depth. We talked about it a billion times. This was a team that had played something like 12 or 13 games in 25 days at this point. And even though there was the extra day between games, between the Aaron injury, the Porter injury, and just the wear and tear of the series, they look like they just ran out of gas as this game went along. And that first round series felt like a conference semifinal. This series felt like a conference final. I don't think there's anything for Denver, for this team to feel like they left anything on the table. I think they had a good playoff run. Certainly, whatever they do front office wise, I certainly think we all agree David Adelman will likely be the coach. I think he deserves to be the coach after the way this run went.
100%.
They've got to add some more depth to this rotation and give themselves a couple extra guys. Nikola Jokic, I thought, said it perfectly. When you look at across the playoffs, Minnesota's got a rock solid 8 guys. Oklahoma City might be the deepest team in the league. Indiana's playing a whole bench unit in the conference finals. And even the Knicks are deeper than this Denver team. They've got a rock solid 7 guys. Like, Denver's been barely at 6 all year. That's just not good enough.
And I spoke to Josh Kroenke, the Nuggets governor, for a little bit in the locker room. He didn't want to make any grand proclamations about David Adelman as far as his future potentially as the head coach there. I will say that kind of the word was, hey, if he wins a playoff series, it's almost certainly going to be his gig. He obviously won a playoff series. They pushed the top-seeded Thunder to the brink, to 7 games. His zone schemes defensively were a big part of the.
He did a great job. They gave the Thunder a ton of problems in the series.
Yeah. His players, by and large.
Well, that's what I've noticed there.
Strongly praised him.
Yeah.
Aaron Gordon straight up said, I hope he's here next year. Joker gave me that. It's above my pay grade, but really praised him. Josh Kroenke did tell me, the one thing he was willing to say on the record was, outside of the championship, this is the most proud I've been because these guys have really rallied. And when you talk about really rallied, they rallied behind David Adelman. He made the decision to fire Michael Malone, put David Adelman in a really tough spot with 3 games left. I'd be very, very surprised if he's not the Nuggets' next head coach. But it's a roster with clear flaws.
That's a telling statement too, because like Bontemps just said, like, no matter what anybody wants to say, not all playoff runs are created equal. And at the end of the day, like
this was not last year when they blew a 20-point lead in game 7 at home. They really could have felt like they left it on the table. They didn't leave anything on the table today.
Right. And when you look at the ledger, it has a cold, hard fact, like, second round exit. You're like, but this was a brutal playoff run. And considering the hand they're holding at the end, this was still a game in the balance midway through the second quarter.
Let's not praise them too much for game 7 when they got the doors.
No, but it's the series.
But
It's
the run for sure.
Yes, they're close. Like this is not some situation where they need to totally remake the team. They need to add some depth.
Yeah,
they need to add significant depth.
They need they need 2 more players. I don't know where they're going to get them.
Well, and then you get into, hey, if you're making a significant move to shake things up, Michael Porter Jr. is probably where you start. He was in trade rumors this year. They need
but what's his value
Julian
right
Strawther
now?
to build on what he did in game 6. They need Pickett to perhaps become a rotation player. We'll see if Russ is back. I would say that's pretty shaky. I mean, he's got a player option, but as we saw last summer, just because he picks it up doesn't mean necessarily that he'd be back.
They have an awesome starting 5. Yes, you want to try to do something with Porter Jr., fine, but Christian Brown is a terrific player. The other 3 guys are awesome. Porter is a solid 5th player. I mean, I give him a ton of credit. He's playing through the shoulder injury. I know it's not a shooting shoulder, but still, they're a tough, hard-nosed team. Jokic at this point, I mean, I was talking to a couple of people about it this weekend. He feels like LeBron at this point. I expect him to win every game. Like the pressure he puts on the opponent every single game. It's not like he's going anywhere anytime soon.
You're right. He's like LeBron, where like when he has a game that we're like, boy, that wasn't a great Jokic game. He only
he was pretty good.
Game 6, it was like 29, 16, and 9. And it was like, he was
like,
around. And
C+.
29, 14, and 8. You're like, that was pretty dominant, nothing special by his standards.
Right.
No, so they're going to be in the mix. And like, if all you got, and again, all you got to do sounds strong, but like, if what you got to do is add depth pieces, like, you can find depth pieces. 2 years ago, they went and found Bruce Brown. They found Jeff Green. They went and found guys. Like, they can do that.
Well,
they have the hard part figured out.
But they haven't done it in 2 years. They haven't found
I understand. It's why they have a new GM, or will have a new GM. But they have the hard part figured out. They've got the best.
Well, that I agree with. I will say this: it kind of felt like when it was all over for the Celtics, it was like, well, they lost Tatum. Porzingis was a shell of himself. And Jaylen Brown, according to Rona Shelburne, had as a meniscus injury.
Might need knee surgery.
And then now you look at the Nuggets. And you're like, well,
it was done.
Look at this was Michael Porter Jr.'s stats in the regular season. He played 77 games, by the way, the most he's ever played. Actually, he played 81 last year, so I take that back. He averaged 18 points, shot 50% from the field, shot 40% from 3. Okay. Averaged 7 rebounds. That was his regular season. In the playoffs, he averaged 9 points. He shot 38%. He shot 36% on 3 and averaged 6 rebounds. He was literally a shell of himself.
And he's playing, it's not a shooting shoulder, but like you're playing with one arm basically. I mean,
so they're already like down. Essentially, they're missing half of a starter there because he's putting up half the numbers that he was before. So that's what happens. I mean, by the way, part of the reason that winning the championship is so hard is because you have to be able to withstand things like this happening to you.
You got to get lucky. You got to avoid injuries.
Yeah.
You got to avoid bad luck on shots.
By the way,
you got to avoid all this stuff.
They made a somewhat of a desperation move to add depth last summer or all season. Signed Russell Westbrook. It was a minimum contract, but still somewhat of a desperation move. And for a while, it really worked. And at the end, it really didn't. He was minus 92 in this series.
Yeah, I mean, we said that going into the playoffs. Like at some point, the Russ thing was going to bite him, and it did. But again, like if what you have to do is add a 6th, 7th, and 8th guy, that's a lot harder than finding Nikola Jokic. Like, they're going to be. Right. I know I'm not telling you guys that, but they're going to be in the mix by default because they've got the core they've got. And Aaron Gordon took a massive step forward this year, his best year of his career. He was awesome. Like they're going to be heard from again. And like I said, I came away from these playoffs just having immense respect for Denver for the way they fought through and dealt with everything they dealt with. And like Gronky said, I mean, I think he said it perfectly. They really rallied together. Mm-hmm. And if you'd said on April 13th or whatever day it was, they got rid of Mike Malone and Calvin Booth, that they were going to be in 7th game of the Western Conference Finals against the Thunder with a chance to win, you would have said, I mean, maybe because of Jokic, but you wouldn't have expected it. And they deserve a ton of credit for that. And we've talked a lot about Denver, understandably, but like we talked about the other night about how much fun it looks like Pacers Knicks is going to be. Like Wolves Thunder, I think it's going to be an incredible series. And you've got 4 teams that there's one of them that's won a title ever in the Knicks, and that was in 1970 and 73. So you've got new blood in the finals.
Yeah.
You've got new blood for winning a title, and you've got what I think are 2 super awesome conference finals and what should be a really fun finals afterward.
Right. So no one, so some of the, like, obviously the Wolves have never won a title. The Pacers have never won a title.
The Pacers, Thunder, and Wolves have never won a title, and the Knicks haven't won it in 50 years.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what we talked about. All right. Let's take a look at this series coming up. Of the teams in the Western Conference, at least, that gave the Thunder issues this year, the Timberwolves were at the top. Now, I think a couple of at least one of those games, the second night of a back-to-back.
They played each other in a home road back-to-back, which was with the a late tip, early tip. I mean, it was ridiculous.
The Wolves are deep. The Wolves are deep. The Wolves are long, and the Wolves are big across the board. And they, like we saw in this series, yes, they got Isaiah Hartenstein, the Thunder. Yes, they can play big, but this is a team that generally is small across the board. And we saw the size of Denver.
Play small very well.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying they play small, they lean small, and the Wolves lean big across the board. And that style of that stylistic clash between the two is probably what's going to define the series. And I'm just super excited from a basketball standpoint to watch. I think it's going to be absolutely awesome.
All right, so they went 2-2 against each other in regular season. Julius Randle didn't play in 3 of the 4 games. One of the things that Stats and Info came up with was Minnesota running a ton of zone against Oklahoma City, and it being relatively successful.
That's what Denver did in this series.
Yes.
And Chris Finch was watching that.
They have nothing to do for days on end. I'm sure they watch every possession.
Wendy, that home road back-to-back. Remember, we saw the Wolves fresh off that, and they were riding high. We saw them. We were in L.A.
Yes.
They were riding high because that's when they came back, I think, from like 16 down in the last 4 minutes of regulation, forced overtime. This was in Oklahoma City to steal that game. And that's the game where they just, they ran that funky little, I don't even know what you call it, like a 2-1-2, I guess, where they just threw 2 at the ball, forced out of Shai's hands, and scrambled behind it. I'm sure the Thunder will see a lot of that in film session. The Thunder did today seem to really be able to. I haven't seen like their stats against the zone today. They were ugly going into Game 7.
Yeah, well, today's game was defined in transition. I mean,
right, but they did seem to start. They seem to start picking it apart. They got a bunch. Like Chet got 3 or 4 baseline cuts for lobs and stuff like that. They seem to be able to get to the middle of it better today.
But I think that's your point about transition. I think that's what's going to define this series too. Like the Thunder always want to run. Their half-court offense is not great. It's Shai, and then it's hoping they hit shots a lot of the time. And then Jalen Williams has shown to be very up and down again, right? This has not been the most encouraging playoffs through 2 rounds for him. But if they get out and run in transition, they're lethal. And as we know, Minnesota, they're bigger, they're more physical, they're comfortable in the half court with Julius and Ant operating. They're going to be able to attack the glass with their 3 bigs crashing inside. Like that, who can control the pace in both these series in different ways, I think is going to play a huge part in who wins. Because you got, 2 teams in the Knicks and the Wolves that probably are going to prefer to mash it a little bit, and 2 teams in Indiana and Oklahoma City that are going to want to make it attractive.
Well, the thing about the Wolves is that Ant and Randall are both doing such great playmaking. I mean, they're averaging like doubles with assists. So they each can score, but the fact that they've got 2 playmakers, which has made their offense way more potent.
Really happy for Julius Randle, by the way. Like he's a guy who's taken a lot of stick over the years for how he plays, and he did a great job with the Knicks and really helped turn that team around. I mean, the Knicks it's easy to forget, but the Knicks, yes, they took a big step when Jalen got there, but the beginning of them turning it around was when Julius signed as a free agent. And like that year under Tom, that first year, like they were a playoff team basically because Julius was a monster on the ball all season for them and sort of drag them along. And they had a rough series against the Hawks. He's had some rough moments in the playoffs before, but he's been awesome in these playoffs. And it's been cool to see him really get a chance to shine in a big spot. And we do have on the table the funniest outcome left, which would be the much discussed Knicks Wolves trade. Carl Towns for Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle becoming a finals matchup, which would be just an unbelievable thing if it happened, given the percentage chances of that happening back in September would have been very small.
Was that a prediction? Bontemps Bricktown scholarship has just been revoked.
No, I didn't say that was a prediction.
Oh,
it would be the funniest outcome, though.
That's what I heard. Listen, we've talked about Ant's improved decision-making, especially down the stretch in games. Mm-hmm. His decision-making is going to be crucial in this series.
Can't turn the ball over against this team.
Because, yes, turnovers are death against the Thunder. They are so good at creating and converting turnovers. And man, Ant, I tell you what, Ant is going to – this is going to be so fun to watch. He's such a dynamic – entertaining, ascending superstar, and he's going to deal with Lou Dort. Mm-hmm. And when he gets a breather from that, it's going to be Alex Caruso or Cason Wallace, and then there's going to be Chet Holmgren or Isaiah Hartenstein on the back line. Like, this is going to be a massive challenge to Ant, and I cannot wait to see how he's going to handle that.
It's going to be awesome.
Interesting little stat. Just going to toss this in there that Stats Williams came up with.
Shout out to Stats Williams, our guy.
As always.
Much better than Jackson stealing his stuff. Go on.
That's not very nice.
Jackson's
also our guy.
Elite.
They're both great.
Elite.
Oh. Sorry, Jackson.
Jalen Clark. Jalen Clark, the Wolves rookie.
I thought you said Caitlin Clark for a second. I was going to talk about Caitlin Clark's 2010 triple-doubles.
Triple-double.
Draymond-like flagrant foul.
I think there's some fever games during the Eastern Conference Finals.
We're Paige Beckers fans around here. Go on.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All they do is get number one picks in Dallas.
Oh, that's right. Of course, I forgot. I forgot she was a wing. I'm sorry. Anyway, Jalen Clark, the rookie from the Wolves, who's basically not played in their playoff rotation, had a lot of success guarding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this year, and didn't just do it for 5 seconds. Had 70 half-court matchups against him, and SGA had a 25% effective field goal percentage when he was guarding.
Does it say what Nickeil Alexander-Walker's numbers are? His cousin.
It says that Jaden McDaniels defended him most on the Wolves.
I know. I remember when the Thunder got bounced by the Wolves in emphatic fashion from the play-in a couple years ago. I remember Nickeil Alexander-Walker having a strong defensive performance in that game. Listen, they've got, Shai, you're not stopping Shai one-on-one. Obviously, it's team defense and all that, but they've got, I would be surprised to see a rookie get a whole lot of minutes in this series.
Well,
they do have some options on him.
I was just going to point it out. I'm just going to let it sit there, is that, he defended him a lot. Now, there was a stretch in the season that due to injuries, he was having to play a lot. Like, remember, there was a time when the Wolves were thin on the perimeter because Dante DiVincenzo was out with the foot or a toe injury. So anyway, I thought that was interesting from Stats to come up with that. I'm sure that's not going to be on the top line of Chris Finch's game plan, but just put it in your little back pocket.
Okay.
Stats Williams doing his thing.
All right.
He's played 6 minutes total this postseason, Jalen Clark. But I would tell him to get extra loose before these games, just in case.
Not loose, extra loose.
Extra loose. So I do expect, there to be moments in this series where it's going to be Ant and Shai going back and forth, not unlike it was Jokic and Shai going back and forth in this series.
Yeah.
Because
it's going to be interesting because Ant has to be careful about getting caught up though in like some kind of duel. Again, I thought one of the great things about Shai's performance today was he didn't feel like, okay, I've got to put a cape on right away. It was a very patient, efficient, dominant performance where, he didn't come out and feel like he had to get up 12 shots in the first quarter. I think Ant's got to There's got to be because sometimes, as
Well, Ant and Julius both can get very loose with the ball, and like you said, against this Thunder team, you cannot get loose with the ball and let them get out and run and get dunks and start feeling good, especially in the games in OKC, getting that cauldron of crowd going. Like then they're off to the races, and good luck trying to keep up with them.
And as Ant told me, actually in OKC on New Year's Eve this year, I asked him about Finch constantly hammering on him to make the right play. And he says, he's just trying to coach winning basketball. But sometimes I just feel like the right play is me. And Finch will tell you he's got a point, but there's that balance of, putting your imprint on a game without forcing it. And when you force it against the Thunder, man, whether it's turnovers, long rebounds, whatever, things can snowball real quick against that team.
Well, and by the way, the Thunder have played 6 games at home in these playoffs. They won one of them by 51. They won another one by 43, and they won another one by 32. So when they get going and running in that environment, it can get away from the opponent really, really fast. And that is, again, where you've got to take care of the ball.
The one loss, they blew a double-figure fourth quarter lead.
Yes.
Which they did the last time. They did the last time they played the Wolves in Oklahoma City.
Yes. And you just cannot give them easy baskets to get their others feeling good. Shai's going to cook. Shai's going to score. The other guys, when the other guys get going and start making shots and feeling good, that's when the avalanches happen. You can't let those guys get energy. You can't let the crowd get into it. You got to keep the game slower. You got to take care of the ball. That's going to be on Julius and Ant to make good decisions, be sound with the ball, and not give up those live ball turnovers like what got the game out of hand today.
I will go ahead and predict right now that Julius Randle will be sick and tired of Alex Caruso by the end of this series. Seriously, Caruso honestly,
Caruso's unbelievable.
He ate Jaren Jackson Jr. alive in the first round, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is probably going to be potentially an All-NBA player this year. I think probably even. Really good player.
He's going to be all defense, I'll tell you that.
Caruso ate him up. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you Caruso ate up Nikola Jokic today because that's not what happened, but he was damn sure a massive, massive factor in closing this series out. The guy's ability to guard up in size is really, really impressive.
I will also say, by the way, one thing you saw as the series went along, obviously Lou Dort had the incredible fourth quarter in Game 5, but Casey Wallace got more and more minutes as the series went on. I'm a huge Casey Wallace fan, and it would not surprise me if that continues to be a trend as this series goes on and as the playoffs go on and as we go into next season, because he is awfully, awfully good and has a lot more juice with the ball than Lou Dort in general. And
especially in transition.
That's a trend to watch.
Smokes.
Yes. I mean, that is a trend to watch going forward.
Yeah. Casey Wallace had 2 dunks in transition.
Or Game 5 where I swear to God, from foul line to foul line, he might be top 3 in the league in terms of speed.
He grew up in Texas. I don't know how he wasn't rushing for 2,500 yards for Richardson. I do know because Richardson High School's football team sucks. But his explosiveness,
it's unbelievable.
Acceleration, and in terms of like the ability to leap. He had 2 dunks in transition today. One of them was like kind of on Joker. I'm like, oh my goodness, 6'5".
How tall is he?
With
6'4".
I don't think that. I don't think he's 6'4". I was talking to Caruso earlier this year, and he pointed out like his ability to block jump shots. Like I saw him block a Lucas step back 3, just straight up block it, which you don't see happen. And Caruso, it's amazing how he can get to the block jumpers at 6'1". I think he was kind of digging him a little bit. He was within earshot.
I don't think he's quite that small. I mean, the guy he reminds me a lot of is a young Drew Holiday. And I think long term, he's got a chance to be at both ends, a Drew Holiday type player. And Drew Holiday is one of my favorite players ever. If he becomes Drew Holiday, that's one hell of a player.
Yeah. Now, I don't think that Drew Holiday had that sort of athletic explosiveness. Like this guy is I don't know, man.
Young Drew Holiday was
an all-star by his third.
No, Drew Holiday is a heck of a player. Drew Holiday is a much we'll see if Case Wallace can have the kind of ball skills Drew Holiday's had and his scoring ability he's had.
I'm just saying, you think about Drew now. Drew looks like a linebacker. Back when he came in the league, if you look at Drew, he was built like Case Wallace.
Now Case Wallace, when he tries to throw lob passes, they do tend to end up in about the fourth row. I'll say that. That's something. Maybe there's a little bit of polish that could be had there.
Drew was a 5-star. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know about. I knew about Drew Holiday in high school. I had not.
I'm just saying, Case Wallace, in terms of acceleration and vertical explosiveness, I think he's a top 2% athlete.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I would agree.
He's awesome. That's just a trend I think that's worth watching, especially going into this series with the athletes that the Wolves have on the perimeter.
I do agree with that. I also think that Lou Dort's linebacker type of play and physicality is going to be a critical element against Anthony Edwards. You're going to have to try to wear
Julius
him down.
Both.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll spend time on Julius too. I mean, those are two of the strongest dudes in the league. I mean, that's going to be some slugfest going back and forth.
When you talk about the variation in shot making, Lou Dort has developed himself into being a 40+% 3-point shooter, but there are playoff games where there's no way in hell you'd believe it.
He's like Danny Green. Peak Danny Green when he was playing for the Spurs. Like in the 2013 finals, he felt like 95% from the field and might have been MVP if they didn't let Game 6 get away from him. And then there were other times when he would go, it felt like 1 for 1,000,000. And just miss everything for games and games and games. And Lou is the same way. Like Game 5, he starts making those threes in the fourth quarter, and you think he's never going to miss again, and then he might go 2 more games and not make a shot. It is funny how he's a lot like that.
But he's a lot better than he used to be, Lou Dort.
It's an incredible it's one of many incredible developmental stories for the Thunder. I mean, guy was an undrafted free agent and has turned himself into an absolutely monster player. And, it's just, these 2 series are going to be awesome. I'm so pumped.
Yeah.
It's fun, athletic, young teams, new blood in the conference finals. 2 of the 4 teams are new. 3 of the 4 never won a title. It's going to be pretty awesome.
Oh, we'll be here for it. And, I don't know. We'll see how our next podcast will publish on Wednesday. We're entering into the phase where we're not sure when podcasts are going to publish.
Here's the real truth of it. Windy, our guy Windy, who was accosted on the street the other day, needs his sleep. And so MacMahon, who takes 1 billion hours to work,
don't do that.
Might just get moved aside for a while.
You haven't written a story since I think 2012.
Yeah, that's definitely not true. I wrote multiple stories last week.
Nobody clicked on them. I know. Here's the thing, though. When he's coming west, he'll be with me. So he's going to be working those. He's going to be working. We got Tuesday, Thursday this week, so we might adjust for Wendy's schedule. I promise you this. He's going to be just fine in Bricktown. I'll escort him around. Big Rich is, I'll introduce you to Big Rich. We'll get you, he's pretty good guy to know around these parts. If your buddies,
he's a good bodyguard to have.
Ain't no one gonna mess with you around here. If you're down with Big Rich, I can promise you that. We'll be all right around here.
All right. Well, all I'm saying is check your feeds in the morning because you never know when Jackson worked all night to get one posted. So, and it'll be that way through.
That's code for Brian's not waiting after these West games all the time for slow ass to pod. So
first of all, you're full of crap. I don't even take that long. Number one,
that's not true.
Blame Teddy Tumbleton's dad. Tell him to get those OKC Thunders quicker.
That is not true. We know that is not true.
Anyway, the pods could be a little erratic about when they're posting, but you won't have a problem with volume. All right. Thank you.
Either in terms of in quantity or in decibels.
I didn't say anything about quality. All right. Thank you to MacMahon and Bontemps. Thank you to Jackson. Thank you for listening and watching the Hoop Collective. We'll talk to you later this week.
Adios, amigos.